You guys asked for it, you guys have got it. Spaghetti Junction, arguably the most famous one of them all. Back in the day, 1965 in fact, when this interchange was proposed, it was described in the local press as a cross between a plate of spaghetti and an unsuccessful attempt at Staffordshire knot. The headline on that paper simply said, Spaghetti Junction, and the phrase we still use today was born. Sadly, I couldn't find a copy of the newspaper in any of the archives, and I promise you, I did try. So today, we're going to try and recreate it, and we're actually going to test out the design and see if it's any good. Feel free to build along if you fancy giving it a go yourself. Now before we start the build, I'm excited to announce we have a sponsor. I've partnered with Instant Gaming to bring you all some massive savings in your favourite games. Having a look through some of the popular titles right now, you can get 27% off Sims 4 Life and Death DLC, 26% off the Warhammer title Space Marine 2, and 33% off the soon-to-be released Farming Simulator 25 Year 1 bundle. One of the reasons I was particularly keen to work with Instant Gaming is that it's a company that I've used personally in the past. I bought most of my Cities Skylines 1 DLC from those guys, and from my own personal experience along with their excellent rating on Trustpilot, I'm more than happy to recommend them to y'all. There are a ton of games to choose from. Click the link below, have a look and see if there's anything that you like the look of, and remember, shopping through that link not only saves you money, but it also really helps support the channel directly, and it enables me to make more content like this in the future. Happy shopping, guys. So let's crack on with Spaghetti Junction now. As usual with these one-off builds, I'll be using RunFX Interchange test map. After clearing the incoming roads, we're going to start at the lowest ground level, and the first element I want to get in place is going to be the roundabout. This will support multiple routes, and as per usual, when these are combined with free-flowing interchanges, you'd expect this to be really the road system's weakest link in terms of traffic flow. When we kick things off like this, it's usually about trying to get a feel for the angles that the roads are coming in at, and of course this design will have multiple flyovers going over the roundabout, so we need to keep that as a consideration. So I reckon getting those in place first should give us a good starting point, as we're going to need to connect ramps either side. The second overpass section coming from the east will actually connect directly into the first one we built. Now, throughout this build, I'm going to be trying to keep the elevation changes as reasonable as possible, so I dragged this one out to try and find a starting point that should give us approximately a 5% gradient. As you might have seen there, I'm still trying to get used to the new road features in Anarchy. I swear I'll get used to it one day. You might also notice in this video there will be a few notifications popping up as we build along. This interchange was built live on YouTube and Twitch, and I usually record the gameplay separately as I build along. However, there were some issues with the OBS not recording, which is obviously a big issue. I did manage to salvage the project by grabbing the VOD, so all of this footage is actually from the live broadcast, and that's why you might see the odd YouTube or Twitch notification pop up. The next overpass is the ramp that takes the traffic off the A33, or A38M I should say rather, onto the A38 itself. It'll be the highest ramp over the roundabout, and that will run directly over the single road below and eventually down to ground level. The ramp will have access roads either side of it as well. And remember, at this point we're not too worried about the exact placement of the roads and the junctions. That can all wait until later. This is all done by eye, so there's no overlays or anything like that involved. So it's even more important at this point to make sure that the elevation changes and the main road angles are roughly in line with the real life one. This overpass took a few attempts to get in. Wasn't quite sure about the angles or the angles of the road going into the roundabout below, but for now I'm just going to run with that and we'll run it straight into the motorway. With the ramps all in their initial places, I wanted to make sure we had enough space for each of the roads coming in and out of the roundabout, just so they can make the connections and really just make sure that they're not too close to any adjacent roads. Obviously, while I was doing that, we may as well get some of the angle connections to the roundabout sorted out as well. One of the major roads connected to this interchange is the M6 motorway. This runs from the border of Scotland to the north, right the way down south past Birmingham itself. So it's time to get this big road in place, and I'm just going to use a couple of simple curves to do that. If I remember right, this was put in a little bit too close to the roundabout, so I think it's going to be deleted and I think it's going to be redone. Once it was drawn in, I could see that the last of the roundabout flyovers just didn't have the clearance it needed. So there's two ways to play that. I could erase the big M6 road that we just put in, or I could lower the single 2-lane road, and I went for the former. There's still going to be a big U-turn flyover to go over all of this, and it's maybe going to be a challenge getting it up and over the M6 and then down to the roundabout with a realistic angle. Whether or not I manage that, well, you'll find out soon enough. It's always a good idea to do the truck test and just see if the clearance is okay for a big vehicle, and as it turns out, this was absolutely fine. As I said earlier, after looking at the overview of what we had done so far, I could see that that M6 was definitely too close to the roundabout. So I took it all out, replaced it with something more like the real life road. Now I'm not going for perfection, I'm not going for a one-to-one recreation, but I do want it as close as the real life one as possible really. But more importantly, I gotta make sure that I've got enough space for any on and off ramps. You'll maybe see that the game formed a little roundabout on a roundabout. We definitely don't want that. It can happen sometimes when you run an elevated road over an existing network. Not a big deal in this case. In fact, it's no bad thing as I kind of want to improve the connection to that roundabout anyway. When we deleted the road, it'll delete the extra roundabout for us, and then we can just replace it with something a bit smoother and a bit more satisfying later on. Now, I connected the northbound M6 to the A38M. That's a mistake. It shouldn't be going direct. It should be connecting to an overpass, but we'll come back, we'll sort that in a minute. It was also apparent that these dual roads coming west out of the roundabout were at the wrong angle. I'd not be able to connect them to the next load of overpasses that we're about to pull in, so time for a redo on them as well. And that's just the nature of building like this. You know, it's a little bit of trial and error. If it doesn't work out, you gotta redo it. The road leading out of the roundabout loops back under that high level M6 and then up and above itself to join the big motorway. For the loop, I'm going to use a semicircle as I often do, then with a quick adjustment of the angle and the elevation, as well as a bit of fine tuning, I should be able to get that in nice and smooth. With that loop in place, it made sense to get the second feeder ramp connected now. I just created a point where I'd like to join it, and I'm going to pull out the ramp and get an idea placement for what's to come. Now, as I just mentioned, the ramp coming off the M6 shouldn't have connected straight into that road below, so I chopped it back and I converted it into a standalone ramp. This will join traffic coming from the other direction on the M6, and we'll connect that in a minute or two with a substantial flyover. The next connection was tricky. The northbound M6 into the roundabout features a wide curved loop, and in retrospect, if you're building along, do that section first. So do it before the smaller loop below, and the reason for that is that this design that I've done today is actually really compact. It's in fact maybe a little bit too compact. I wasn't able to get a good elevation change here despite raising the road as soon as it leaves the roundabout. The alternatives here were to redo and push out the roundabout to the left, or delete the loop below and push it out to the right, or alternatively lower the M6 flyover itself, and quite frankly none of them really appealed to me. So for this one ramp I'm going to suck it up and I'm just going to accept that it's a bit on the steep side. At this point, it's just a matter of connecting the ramps. I'm not looking to get the connections perfect just yet, but rather I'm going to more be looking to get the curves and the ramps in place with good clearance. And that said, if they go in first time, I'll take it. As I've shown you in plenty of videos in the past, I like to get the curve up and over and get a feel for the overall positioning. Then I like to reduce the height after it crosses the highway. We'll get that down to the level that I want. I'll use the marker just to keep the position and the angle. Tried and tested technique, always works. I'm going to connect the M6 to all of the connections now. First, I did the overpass, that will connect to the direct turn coming off the opposite side. That will of course need to be connected to the other side of the motorway, and it'll give a direct route to the roundabout as well. And I'm going to join a couple of the elevated ramps together over at that section too. I've got a few others to complete, so I'm going to crack on with that now. I'll be sure to include every connection here, so if you are building along, you get to see what I'm doing. You might see the same section being done more than once, and due to the nature of the build with the long ramps, pretty tough to get them in first time. So where I'm not happy, I'm just going to delete, I'm just going to redraw. And now that could be the whole ramp, or maybe it could just be a small section of the curve. Right, let's get those finished up. All that's really left to do now is to hook up the roads to the traffic spawners and tidy up a few things. Where I can see some sections should be converted to quay wall or to an elevated section, then we'll get them replaced. Where I can see a ramp connection isn't connecting smooth to the highway, we'll get that replaced. And where I can see any curves that just simply aren't looking good, I'll crop them out and I'll get them replaced. Any pillars that have spawned on the roads, they'll need to be deleted and tidied up. And it's also a good time to double check clearances on each of the ramps, and if any of them are looking a bit tight, then now's the time to adjust it with Move It. I'm happy with the main interchange layout that I wanted, and now I want to give it some context, and I went ahead and I threw up a few neighbourhoods. I'm not building out Birmingham here, I'm not going to be detailing canals or railways or anything like that, but I do want the neighbourhoods to at least vaguely resemble the surrounding built environment down there. So I went ahead and put together a decent bit of industry, plenty of row home terraces and copious amounts of trees, and that took absolutely forever to put in. I've used the demand mod again here, and that'll help me get the whole thing filled out nice and quickly. Fair play to everyone who stuck with me on the live stream while I did all those trees. In retrospect, I should probably just tree brush the whole thing with Anarchy off and be done with it, but you just don't get the same density on the trees doing it that way, you know, and it does make quite a difference in the cinematic shots, having them all in. So I'll have a quick look at one of the routes on first person mode, and we'll be able to get a quick view of the overpasses there and a bit of the industry with the exit of the interchange, which is kind of nice. I love to see the car despawn in front there, you know, for no apparent reason, that's cool. We'll have a look at some aerial shots now, and I think you can really get a feel for the complexity of the junction as we spin about and have a look at the traffic running in full flow. I think overall I'm pretty happy with the build, the angles and the connections mostly come out the way I wanted, and the steep ramp terminating on the roundabout, yeah, that's going to keep me up at night, but I'll live, don't worry about me. By the time you watch this, potentially the UK region pack might have dropped, so if you decide to build it yourself with some UK assets, do send me a screenshot or something on Discord, I'd love to have a look at it. I think overall the interchange pretty much works as expected. The roundabout is certainly the weak point, and there are some tailbacks, but the game deals with that by, you know, despawning obviously, and in fairness we know roundabouts just aren't going to compete with free flowing connections, but it seems to be doing okay considering the amount of traffic on the spawners, you know, the amount of traffic the spawners are sending out. Now obviously I don't have a scientific way of measuring that, so we'll just go with what we can see on the video, you know. Thank you again to Instant Gaming for sponsoring today's video. Please do go check the link in the description, it'll really help the channel out and I'll be ever so grateful. I'll leave you guys with a few more shots of this incredible interchange doing its thing now. Thanks again for watching, take care of yourselves, I'll see you in the next one.